so yeah, I'm going to say I did refuse to put it on because it looked too heavy to me. Looked good on Michael, right? Okay, so I'm going to talk about a project that many of you were here last year actually toured, and that is our MPP House Prototype, which I've been working on with Mark Fretz and Jason Stenson, and really a cast of thousands. We have, pages of people who have worked on this, from TDI staff to like 4 generations of graduate students and et cetera. One of whom is here, Blaine is here, who worked on it last year. And how many of you were here last year and got to tour the house? Well, maybe not as many people as I thought. So maybe this won't be completely repetitive. So this is a project that we have been working on for way too long, really since really starting in 2018 and then really starting on in 2020. And we're actually sort of working with very small grants from the sub-awards from Wood Innovation Grants for a while. And when the EDA BBRC project came along, that project provided funding to actually do full-size prototyping, which is when we actually began to make progress on the project. So there's sort of more history and background to this, which I won't go through, but basically we developed a 2-story, 2-bedroom, very compact house type, which is meant for cottage clusters and ADUs in response to Oregon legislation, which essentially got rid of single-family zoning in any community over population 10,000, and we're trying to develop some very efficient models. So why mass timber and which mass timber? So as I think I said when asked about funding and policy, the idea of using more mass timber in houses is to create more of a market for mass timber, to create more manufacturing of mass timber plants in rural communities, and to create more of a market for small diameter, selectively harvested logs to reduce wildfire risk. So there are a lot of reasons to do it that have to do with the economy in general: wildfire risk, rural jobs, rural economic development. But it's also possible to make something that is much more resilient than a light wood frame house. So we wanted to see if we could actually make these houses compete on price with light wood frame. We know mass timber can compete at anything above 5 stories that cannot be built with light wood frame. The question is, could we make it cheap enough? And before you ask, we don't know yet, right? The second prototype is going to tell us that so far. So instead of working with CLT, mass plywood was developed and certified in 2018, which is when we started working on this. And we discovered we could work with really thin panels, 3-inch and 2-inch panels, which saved a ton of fiber. So we began working with Frere's mass plywood panels on this project, and we've been working on it for like 5 years. I don't know, way too long, right? Took much more time than it should have. And we developed, plans for a 2-story, 2-bedroom house. And the idea was to make it flat packed. We originally had thought about volumetric, but some very smart people in the construction industry who we consulted with were like, if you're going to do small infill sites, you should do flat pack, right? So you can actually take all the parts in a truck and put it up on site. And that, modular is probably good for slightly larger installations, or if you're doing an entire house. So that's what we embarked on. And our first idea about this was that we were going to make, as you can see here, a series of, we were basically going to do platform framing, where we did mostly horizontal panels. What this meant was that we worked closely with an engineering team, Michael Gershfeld, who was here from Cal Poly Pomona, and Ficadenti, Wagner, and Castle, which is an engineering firm that actually did the calculations and drawings, and of course are Michael's former students from Cal Poly Pomona, where I used to teach with Michael. So the original idea was that we thought we were going to ship these panels with insulation and cladding already on them, and this led us to a huge number of custom steel connectors on the interior, as well as a lot of interesting kinds of miter joints. Well, the issue with that, and there was a kind of issue with that, was that it involved a huge amount of hand labor and drilling in self-tapping screws. And we did not ask a contractor to do the first one. We actually wound up building it ourselves. And by ourselves, I mean the entire team except for me. I did a little sanding. That was about it. So we developed these interesting seismic connections, where the engineers did that. We did discover by building in Emerson that It could go up very quickly. Maybe not as fast as this. This is one of our time lapses, but still very quickly. But what it taught us was that there probably was a much more efficient way to do this. And because we had originally planned to do two prototypes, even though we were pretty sure when we started this one that we were probably not going to do it this way the second time, we decided to do it to learn a lot from it, which in fact we did. So so everybody who was here last year got to tour this. If you come back next year, you'll tour the second one. And we had an open house because members of the Oregon Mass Timber Coalition, who do a lot of communication, decided we should furnish the house and treat it as if we were real estate agents, and then people tramp through. We had a giant open house where we had about 120 people come through in an afternoon. And as you can see, we went through the IKEA catalog and ordered furniture for dining and for the living room, and we put in a kitchen, et cetera. And we did an extremely non-scientific survey of people as they were going through it. It was like, how would you like living in a plywood house? And again, because these people were Oregonians, they're generally very happy about wood. Few people did ask if they could put up wallpaper. It was like, you could, right? Yeah, painted plywood does not look good at all. But you could put up wallpaper. We did actually do a kind of very light whitewash. I actually did another thing, I got to pick the color, which was a white with some yellow in it and a very high degree of reflectance. And we put it in about a 300% solution into Timber Pro so that we could apply it in one coat. Because we know that as one of my colleagues likes to say, the wood tans over time. So we wanted to stop it from doing that and lighten it up as much as possible. So this is the upstairs, again, fully furnished as 2 bedrooms. And I think I have a slide of the bathrooms, which also went in. So there's an enormous amount of enthusiastic and interest in this, but the biggest question is how much does it cost? And the answer is we don't know. But we are going to be finding out very soon because we are embarking on a second prototype. So the second one, we're actually giving up this concept that we're actually shipping the panels with insulation and cladding. We assume that we are just going to ship the panels that are already pre-cut in essentially a kit of parts that will come with the panels and with the steel connectors. And because we're not shipping with the insulation and cladding, we can do all the steel connections with just standard connections. So I know there's some people here from Simpsons and Rotoglass, right? So just standard connections and not any custom ones. And we're going to be doing vertical panels, which means we don't have to do kind of structural connections between panel to panel, which saves a lot of hand labor. And in the end, we're also using one panel less than we did in the horizontal version, which is something. And we're also taking out most of the steel and almost all of the custom steel. So we think we've cut about 15,000 out of the project. But again, we're not quite sure what it cost yet because we did the fabrication in the lab. We did the construction ourselves. So we would be several months ahead if, and I'm going to complain for a minute here, UO contracts, a little slow. And we should have had an RFP issued more than 2 months ago. It finally went out. We're about to make an award. We're really going to be starting the second prototype very, very soon. And this one is going to be going up outside Emerson in the yard. It will have insulation and cladding on it. And we'll be doing, it'll go up for a year because, and I'm going to interrupt myself for a minute here. So this is just a drawing of the panels. And you can already see, and you can see from the diagram that we will not have to do structural connections between panels because they're all going to be vertical. And I mean, we have to do side to side, but not ones that involve miter joints, which is a huge saving of labor. And we are using fewer panels on top of it. And this is, and you'd have to compare it to the other one, but we're using one 3-inch panel less. We're using 3-inch panels for the exterior and for the floor, and all the interior panels are just 2-inch panels. So, you know, this is the complicated nesting we have for cutting up the panels. And again, we're going to find out how much that fabrication costs. And this time we are putting in plumbing. We are not running water through that plumbing. Though we are putting in electrical, which we did last time. We'll be hooking it up electrically. And this is what it's going to look like. We actually designed a porch and we have a vent stack and some other things that are going to go in it. But it's going to go up for a year because we're going to be testing lots of things, as Mark said. We're going to be testing air infiltration, thermal, daylighting, acoustics. What else am I forgetting, Mark, that we're testing, that you're testing? I'm not doing that testing. Vibration, yeah,
moisture.
yeah,
So.
yeah. And by keeping up for an entire year, we're going to be testing it under various circumstances. So when you come back next year, we're actually going to be able to tour you through it again, but we are going to furnish it and have open houses and get people's reaction to it. We know architects love plywood. The question is, does everybody love plywood? Relates to Dylan's question about, have you tested this in other parts of the country? Here, everybody loves wood, right? So it's like much more enthusiasm about it. And I'm just going to say 2 words about another project, that the prototyping project with the EDA was for the house, but also for an energy and seismic facade retrofit project, which has a lot of similarities to this one. And we did a 1-story mock-up with a wood innovation grant quite some time ago, but due to a number of delays, which we will not go into, this one we just put out an RFP for, so that also should be happening pretty quickly. We're going to be doing a 3-story mock-up of this inside the Emerson lab. The idea of this is that there'll be pre-assembled panels, this time with insulation and cladding, that are for retrofitting 2- and 3-story multifamily residential units all up and down the West Coast that are desperately in need of both seismic and energy retrofit. Mark looks a little puzzled, but we are doing that, right?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the finger and why that's great. Anyway.
Yeah, right. Right. So that one, we're going to be doing that. That one will be going up in the next few months. I think that we actually are not going to have space on the floor until December. And we did very sadly have to disassemble the first prototype, because as you will see when you go to Emerson, if you haven't been there, there's a huge amount of demand for space on the strong floor. So we had to take it down, but this one we're going to put up outside on the strong pad that's out there. And again, we're very excited to invite you to come see it once we have it up. Thank you.